Hello, I'm Stefan Mock from Frederick Roof Repair, and I want to talk to you about 6 major features of the Atlas shingle and how it compares to the other major manufacturers in our area and why I think it's the better choice. Now, the 6 major manufacturers in our area are Atlas, CertainTeed, GAF, TAMCO, ICO, and Owens Corning. So probably the big 3, the ones you'll hear about the most, won't be Owens Corning, which I'll bring up a little bit later, won't be ICO. Let's talk about these 4. Those 2 are really not sold that much in our region. TAMCO is actually located in Frederick, Maryland, off of English Muffin Way, the factory is. Interestingly enough, most roofers don't use TAMCO shingles in our region. That's interesting. I say it's because they're known as a builder grade shingle. And so you won't probably get an estimate for TAMCO, you may get them as an option. GAF is the biggest manufacturer of shingles in North America. They're also the only manufacturer that will sue people for including them in their tests online. For instance, at roofinsights.com. CertainTeed is the most sold shingle in our region and has been probably for the better part of the last 2 decades. Atlas is the shingle that I believe is the best, and for no less than 6 reasons that I want to detail. Okay, so the first reason that I like the Atlas shingle over the other 5 is what I call the logical face versus the illogical face distinction. And so the face of a shingle in an architectural shingle is that portion of the shingle that you're going to see when the roof has been completely installed. It's called the face, and then this is an example. It's from the bottom to this line here, this horizontal line. And in 5 of 6 instances, there's an illogical dimension of 5 5/8 inches. Why is this a problem? Roofers have always chalked the roof off to keep nice, straight, quality installation. They've chalked it every 2 shingles. And so you're going to have to multiply the face by 2 and then chalk accordingly. So if the face is 5 5/8 inches, 2 times 2, that's 11 1/4. If you tell crews who, it's not a criticism, it's just true, don't have the best math skills, that decent math skills, but not the best. If you tell them to mark a roof 11 1/4, 22 1/2, 33 3/4, 45, 56 1/4, they're going to look at you like you have 2 heads. They're not going to do it, and they're going to do one of 2 things. They're either going to mark the roof off every 11 inches, 11, 22, 33, that's not difficult, and get up to 99 and probably start over with the tape measure, or there's another way around it. You can mark 22 1/2, 45, and then move the tape, 22 1/2, 45. In the case of the 22 1/2, 45 solution, we're no longer marking the roof every 2 shingles, we're marking every 4. That is a concession being made because the manufacturer's chosen to do a 5 5/8 inch base. In the case of the 11, 22, 33, 44, technically, it's not the end of the world, but technically, that's an installation defect. The one shingle is still going to be 5 5/8, and then when you hit that line at 11, it's going to drop a 1/4 inch. That's potential wind lift. It impacts the shadow line. It's just not correct. And so you might say, well, why would a manufacturer do that? And in fact, why would 5 manufacturers choose 5 5/8 vertical exposure on the face of their shingle if they could do anything they wanted? Well, for every roofing company that chooses the 11, 22, 33, 44 chalking solution, you're going to sell an extra row of shingles front and back on every house. Okay, so that's why they're doing it. Well, in contrast, you have the Atlas shingle. Okay, it's the only one. I call it the logical face. The Atlas shingle is 6 inches vertical. Okay, so if I'm going to mark that roof every 2 shingles, how am I going to mark it? 1 foot, 2 foot, 3 foot, until the tape measure runs out. So this is going to guarantee that the roofer can chalk every 2 shingles and that it's going to be properly installed. In almost every instance, something is not going to be quite right with this illogical face. Okay, the second thing I want to talk about that distinguishes the Atlas from other shingles is the double tar strip or sealant strip versus a single. Now, in the case of these 5, there's always a single tar strip. There's different ways they do it. Typically, it's on the back bottom of the shingle. That's not super important. What's more important is whether or not they use a stitch that is tar and then no tar, tar and then no tar, or a solid tar strip. Now, in general, they're going to use the stitch, and that actually is better if you had to choose between the two. TAMCO uses a continuous tar strip. That's problematic because if water gets, and it will, in wind-driven rain, snowmelt, water gets underneath where 2 shingles come together and gets on top of that tar strip. If it's continuous, it's actually going to run along that tar strip, find no way out, and find the next joint between 2 shingles. So it's really not a good idea to do a continuous tar strip. In the case of the Atlas, you have a double tar strip. You have what's called a stitch. That's the same as with the rest. And then you have a half stitch. And so it's the only double tar strip. I can only speak to Atlas on this. It is SBS modified tar. That means it's rubberized. It's really aggressive. And that's a good thing. But the stitch allows that water, should it get under the shingle, it has an opportunity to get out. And so that, again, makes Atlas the better choice. Now, the third reason, and this reason is third for no particular reason, it's just the way I laid it out, but the third reason is probably the most important thing to me as a roofer, and it's what's called the width of the common bond. Now, that's a little hard to detail without showing you shingles in person, but let me draw a shingle real quick to tell you what the common bond is, and then show you how the Atlas compares with the other 5. So in an architectural shingle, there's the front of the shingle, this large rectangle, and it has these big missing pieces. Now a plate is put onto the back. You can't have big missing pieces in the shingle, and so you get this. Now, if the plate was shorter than these missing pieces, obviously we'd have problems because it would leak at these horizontal lines. So obviously it's taller by some amount. And I'm going to draw a dash line because you can't see this. This is on the back of the shingle. But so you're going to get something like this. And so really, if you think about it, down here in the face, you have a double layer, and then the single layer where that plate fills in the hole, and then you have a double layer and a single, and continues on, double, single, double. And of course, above this dashed line, you have a single layer all the way across. But where there is no missing piece, but we're still below the top of the plate, you get a continuous double layer zone. That's the common bond. And that's just this region right here. Now, historically, we're told you have to nail in the common bond, and there's good reason for that. If you don't nail in the common bond, let's say you nail up here, well, that plate is not actually nailed to the house at all. You're actually just nailing the front piece to the roof. This caused various problems. So they said, no, we need you to nail in the common bond. Okay? Well, I agree with that. Well, roofers complain, though. Universally complain about the common bond being too narrow. So let me get rid of this. How wide is the common bond on these 5 shingles? All right, so we're going to scale this up, obviously. We're going to draw a 5-inch line representing the common bond of these 5 shingles at 5/8. These shingles have a 5/8 inch common bond. Now the nail head itself is approximately 3/8. So let's put a 3-inch diameter circle, roughly, representing the nail. So what do you have above and below if you nail this nail perfectly in the common bond? You have 1/8 of an inch above and below. Well, that's extremely narrow. You're nailing the shingles on with a gun. And so roofers complain, this is a problem. Could you please widen this double layer area? Well, various solutions have been employed, but in no instance of these 5 have they actually widened the common bond. I'll give you an example with the CertainTeed shingle. Maybe you can see it. Can you zoom in on that? And see these blue, can you see that blue line? CertainTeed's solution was to leave the common bond at 5/8, paint a blue latex line on the shingle quite a bit higher, and say, go ahead and nail up to there now. We don't care. We think our shingle can endure missing that plate, nailing high, what we call nailing high. Well, that's really no solution at all. The plate still isn't nailed to the roof if you nail up there. And I want to point something else out too. You could nail a perfect nail, in theory, 3/8 right in the middle of 5/8. You could nail low. This portion of the nail would show. That's no good. You could nail really high, completely miss it. That's no good. You could nail slightly high. This is perhaps the worst of all because you hit a very small void in the back, and with the result that the nails very often rip the shingle. It'd be better not to put that nail in at all. The Atlas common bond, the actual double layer, is not 5/8. So we're going to draw this to scale. That was a 5-inch line. The Atlas common bond is 12/8. Let me draw my 3-inch nail. I'm sorry, 3/8 of an inch nail head. So scaled up, this is the difference between Atlas and the other 5. You got 5/8 to 12/8. This is 240% larger. It's what we've been asking for all these years. Atlas is the only manufacturer who has actually improved the common bond.
Yeah.
All right, the fourth thing that I really like about the Atlas shingle is that it has Scotchgard protection from 3M. None of the other manufacturers have Scotchgard protection for a couple of different reasons. One, either they're in no relationship with 3M to get the Scotchgard protection, or because they don't want to meet the requirements to get the Scotchgard protection. So what is this and how is it acquired? In the 50s, the scientists at 3M started figuring out why roofs would get black streaks on them, but they would not get these black streaks below metal flashing details. And they determined that when the rain hits the metal flashing detail, it picks up metallic ions, and this was enough to suppress the growth of blue-green algae on the shingle. And so they started working on a solution baked right into the shingle. And what they made was a ceramic-coated copper granule. Now, they not only made the granule, but they determined what it would take to suppress blue-green algae growth, not for some period of the life of the shingle, but for the entire life of the shingle. And what they determined was it would take a minimum 10% of the surface area of the shingle. The granules had to be this ceramic-coated copper granule, and it had to be evenly distributed on the surface of that product. It couldn't just all be in one place. So, based on that science, they will supply a manufacturer that uses their granule with the Scotchgard protection warranty, which is for the life of the shingle. This will not happen on your roof. CertainTeed gets their granule from 3M. Atlas gets their granule from 3M. I don't know about all of them. I know GAF does not. But let's just talk about CertainTeed, the biggest seller in our region, and Atlas. They both use the copper granule from 3M, but CertainTeed doesn't have a Scotchgard protection. Well, why not? Because they won't meet the requirements. So if you look at a Landmark shingle, that would be CertainTeed's architectural, or their Landmark Pro, you're going to get some period of the life of the shingle is going to be that, not Scotchgard, it's going to be that algae resistance warranty. With a Landmark, it's 10 years. With a Pro, it's either 12 or 15. I believe it's 12. You expect this roof to last hopefully 30 years if you're using an architectural shingle. And so 10 years is not that great. A third of the life, and then you get these black streaks on your roof. It looks terrible. You may not get it, but a lot of houses in Maryland do. Well, Atlas has the Scotchgard protection. That is for the life of the shingle. It is not going to grow blue-green algae. 3 requirements are actually necessary to get the Scotchgard protection. 1, you have to use greater than 10%. 2, you have to evenly distribute it. I already said both those things. The third is you have to have a 3M rep in your factory. They're not going to do this on a handshake. So 2 manufacturers in the United States have Scotchgard protection, and that's Atlas and a company called Malarkey. Well, that's out west. We can't use their shingles. And so in the East, if you want a roof that's guaranteed not to have black streaks, you got to go with the Atlas shingle. You're not going to get that guarantee anywhere else. It's going to be for a portion of the life. Okay, the 5th thing that I really like about the Atlas shingle is the starter course. Now that's a little hard to explain just talking to you through a video, but basically there's a shingle that's fundamentally different from the main shingle that covers your roof. The shingles we've been talking about, it's called the starter course. And it has to go along the bottom of every roof slope. It can also go up the edges, and most roofers will do what's called a full perimeter starter course. But the essential purpose of this shingle is to ensure that there aren't leaks where 2 shingles come together in the bottom row. You can imagine if 2 shingles come together in the bottom row, there's a joint there, and then the next course starts, in most of the cases, 5 5/8 inch up, or in the case of the Atlas, 6 inches up. You would have a leak there at that joint. So you have to have something underneath. That's the starter shingle. The rule in shingles, and in slates and cedar shakes, any roof that's put together in separate pieces, as opposed to, say, a standing seam roof that essentially becomes a single piece, or a flat roof, a monolithic seal. In every roof that's separate pieces, the rule is that a shingle, we'll just use shingles now, a shingle must be 2 faces plus 2 inches tall. It's just a rule. And so the starter course must be 1 face plus 2 inches tall. It must be taller than that joint by 2 inches. And that's the rule. And so if you take a CertainTeed shingle and it has a 5 5/8 inch face, then the starter shingle will be 7 5/8 inches tall. And that's fine. That meets your requirement. They're not doing anything wrong by doing that. The Atlas shingle we know has a 6 inch face. So the starter would need to be 8 inches tall. It happens to be 12 inches tall. Well, why? There's probably a logistical reason for that. Another shingle we're not talking about, 3-tab shingles, are in fact 12 inches tall. Perhaps they're able to do minimal changing in the factory to run starters instead of 3-tab shingles. Whatever the reason, it's 300% greater coverage at the joint over any of the other choices. And so, again, Atlas has gone above and beyond what's required to produce a better product. So the sixth thing I want to talk about is what I call the baked-in warranty. So I'm going to describe that to you as you go to Best Buy and you buy a flat screen TV. They cost way too much money, but you need one. And so you get up to the counter and they say, for $200, and then they offer you some extended warranty. I don't know about you, that kind of offends me. I just spent all this money on this TV. Can I just get a good warranty for my purchase? And then I'll hope it extends beyond that. And so that's the baked-in warranty is what you get by virtue of having bought the product. It has nothing to do with the extended warranty. Now, in the case of, I'm going to pull out Certainteed because I'm more familiar. Warranties are similar and very convoluted and confusing amongst these 5, but I'm going to pull Certainteed out because it's probably the competitor to Atlas you're most likely to run into. Their baked-in warranty on the Landmark is 10 years. Okay, you get that warranty against manufacturing defects, and that's key. Manufacturing defects for 10 years. You get it by virtue of having the product bought and installed on your home. The Landmark Pro, it's another slight variation of the same shingle. I believe that's 12 years. Now, if you can see this here, 50 question mark. Well, what is that? This is seriously offensive if you understand what's going on. So Certainteed will allow roofers to either give or sell exalted warranties to the homeowner when they use the system. And they will allow what's called a 4-star warranty, even a 5-star warranty. But at the 4-star level, you're not going to understand this at first because you're going to think I said something incorrectly, and we'll back up and explain. Certainteed will provide you a 50-year warranty against manufacturing defects on a shingle with a 30-year life expectancy. Okay? So when I realized this was going on, I went to the rep at Certainteed and I said, okay, I live in the tech age. I have a smartphone. I'm young enough. I get my roof from Certainteed. I open up my calendar and I put an event to call Certainteed for my brand new roof on their dime in 30 years from today. And so in 30 years, my granules are in the gutter, my roof's got nail pops, it's just worn out from age. And I call up Certainteed and say, I'm ready for my new roof. You gave me a 50-year warranty. And he said, well, you can't do that. Well, what do you mean I can't do that? You gave me a 50-year warranty. He said, yeah, but you can't prove a manufacturing defect on a product that wears out in 30 years. So I said, is this a 200-year life insurance policy that's null and void if I die after age 100? Basically, that's what it amounts to. And so it's a fraudulent warranty. I think approaching a customer with a fraudulent warranty straight out of the gate, that's just bad business. So here you have this 50-year warranty that cannot be made good on after 30 years. That is nonsense, and it's a trick. So Atlas's baked-in warranty is 15 years. All right, so those are the 6 main reasons I like the Atlas shingle over the other 5. More could be said. The Atlas shingle, and you'll see these videos if you follow the links in the contract. The Atlas shingle was the only manufacturer that undersold and over-delivered on weight, which again is just a mark of honesty. A lot of the manufacturers claimed higher weight per 100 square feet, came in way lower. I will say Certainteed was in the range they gave, so they were telling the truth, but nobody undersold and over-delivered save for Atlas. Another experiment was done on granule loss. That's important when it comes to shingles. You don't want all your granules washing off your shingle. Atlas won that competition, or I should say that experiment. So there's lots of things, but basically my summary point would be, if you're looking for a manufacturer who does what they say and says what they do, Nobody does it better than Atlas. And that's why I sell these shingles. That's why I promote them. Just one last point comes to mind, the CertainTeed. Most manufacturers will have a set of colors in their architectural line that are more vibrant. And CertainTeed, that's called the Landmark Pro Max Def shingle. And Atlas is no different. Atlas has 5 shingle colors that are more vibrant. They're called the Natural Selections. CertainTeed charges more money. Atlas says, well, why would we charge you more money? Because we put different rocks on the shingle, you know? And so that's just one more thing I like about them. If you have any questions after this, something was not clear, certainly get back to me with any questions you have, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. Thank you.